Hoy quiero que te hagas una pregunta simple pero incómoda. ¿Estás viviendo para tu futuro o solo reaccionando a tu presente? La mayoría de las personas no fracasan por falta de talento, fracasan porque nunca deciden enfocarse con intención en el destino que deseen. Desde este momento debes entender algo fundamental. Tu futuro no se crea solo, se construye. Y se construye primero en tu mente, luego en tus decisiones y finalmente en tus acciones diarias. Debes enfocarte en tu futuro porque todo lo valioso en la vida exige dirección. Sin una visión clara, la energía se dispersa, el tiempo se desperdicia y el potencial se pierde. Las personas exitosas piensan a largo plazo. No preguntan qué es cómodo ahora, preguntan qué es correcto para mi vida dentro de 5, 10 o 20 años. Cuando enfocas tu mente en el futuro, tus prioridades cambian, tus hábitos se alinean y tus excusas comienzan a desaparecer. El enfoque es una disciplina, no es motivación pasajera ni emoción momentánea. Es la capacidad de decir no a lo inmediato para decir sí a lo importante. Cada vez que eliges aprender en lugar de distraerte, ahorrar en lugar de gastar impulsivamente, mejorar en lugar de quejarte, estás votando por la persona que quieres llegar a ser. Tu futuro se fortalece con cada decisión consciente que tomas hoy, incluso cuando nadie te está observando. Muchas personas esperan sentirse listas antes de actuar, pero el éxito funciona al revés. Primero actúas, luego creces y finalmente te conviertes. Si te enfocas solo en cómo te sientes hoy, quedarás atrapado en la mediocridad. Pero si te enfocas en quién necesitas ser mañana, desarrollarás la autodisciplina necesaria para avanzar incluso cuando sea difícil. El dolor de la disciplina siempre será menor que el dolor del arrepentimiento. Cuando defines con claridad tu futuro, tu mente empieza a buscar oportunidades en lugar de excusas. Empiezas a notar personas, libros, ideas y caminos que antes ignorabas. Esto no es suerte, es enfoque. La mente humana trabaja como un imán, atrae aquello en lo que piensa de manera constante. Si piensas en límites, atraerás límites. Si piensas en crecimiento, atraerás crecimiento. Recuerda esto, no puedes cambiar tu pasado, pero puedes diseñar tu futuro con precisión. Decide hoy qué tipo de vida quieres, qué nivel de carácter necesitas y qué estándares no estás dispuesto a negociar. Luego comprométete a pagar el precio día tras día, con paciencia y consistencia. El éxito no llega de golpe, llega como resultado inevitable de decisiones correctas repetidas en el tiempo. Y ahora, permíteme cerrar con esta verdad poderosa. Dentro de algunos años, el tiempo habrá pasado de todas formas. La única pregunta es quién serás tú cuando ese tiempo haya pasado. Empieza hoy, enfócate en tu futuro, actúa con propósito, vive con dirección, porque cuando el enfoque es claro, el futuro deja de ser una esperanza y se convierte en un destino inevitable. Your future is not shaped by luck, coincidence or random circumstances. It is crafted meticulously, deliberately and intentionally through the choices you make every single day. Imagine two people starting at the same point in life, same opportunities, same resources, same environment, but one ends up achieving extraordinary success while the other struggles to survive. The difference is not talent, intelligence, or even hard work alone. The difference is deliberate decision-making. Every action, every choice, every small decision compounds over time to create outcomes far beyond what immediate observation can reveal. When you begin to understand this, you realize that waiting for the right moment or good luck is the ultimate trap. The truth is, there is no perfect moment, only the moment you decide to act with intention and clarity. The power of deliberate decisions lies in their ability to direct energy, focus and resources toward a specific goal. A random effort produces random results, but intentional action produces predictable results. Imagine your mind as a GPS system. If you leave it on without input, it will drift aimlessly, reacting to every obstacle, every distraction, every temptation. But once you program a destination, your mind calculates every turn, every choice, every adjustment to keep you on the path toward that goal. This is the essence of deliberate decision-making. Every choice you make is a building block, a step toward the reality you desire. Every day presents dozens of decisions, some trivial, some critical, but all of them consciously or unconsciously define the trajectory of your life. Consider this. The decision to invest time in learning a new skill instead of scrolling mindlessly on your phone may seem small in the moment, but over months and years, that choice compounds into mastery, opportunities, and higher earning potential. The decision to maintain integrity in your work, even when shortcuts seem tempting, creates trust, credibility, and influence that lasts a lifetime. The decision to wake up early and plan your day intentionally transforms productivity and mental clarity. None of these decisions guarantees instant results, but they guarantee progress in the direction of your chosen future. Deliberate decisions require awareness. They require you to pause before acting, to evaluate the consequences of your choices, and to align every decision with the life you want to create. Many people live unconsciously, reacting to circumstances, yielding to immediate gratification and blaming external factors when life doesn't go as planned. This is the trap of randomness. The people who rise above mediocrity understand that freedom is not the absence of structure, freedom is the mastery of choice. By deliberately deciding how to spend your time, energy, and resources, you seize control of your destiny rather than surrendering it to chance. The key is consistency. One deliberate decision does not create a future. It starts a chain reaction. It is the repeated practice of choosing consciously even when it is difficult or uncomfortable that reshapes your trajectory. Every decision becomes a vote for the type of person you want to become, the life you want to live, and the legacy you want to leave. And here is a crucial insight. The sooner you start, the greater the compounding effect. A small, disciplined choice today can produce results that far outweigh a decade of indecision. Finally, remember that deliberate decisions are empowered decisions. They put you in the driver's seat, giving you confidence, clarity, and purpose. When you embrace the responsibility of crafting your own future, you no longer feel like a victim of circumstance. You become the architect of your destiny, the author of your story, and the unstoppable force moving steadily toward the life you envision. Each choice you make, each action you take, becomes the cornerstone of a future that is not left to chance, but designed by your intention, precision, and unwavering commitment. Change always begins in the invisible world before it ever shows up in the visible one. Long before circumstances shift, results improve, or success becomes noticeable, something far more important must happen internally. Your thoughts, beliefs, and self-image quietly shape every decision you make. What you think about consistently becomes what you act on, and what you act on repeatedly becomes your reality. Many people try to change their lives by adjusting external factors, new environments, new opportunities, new relationships, without first changing the internal lens through which they see themselves. When that inner lens remains the same, the outer world eventually returns to its old patterns. The mind is the control center of performance. Every action you take is preceded by a thought, and every habit is fueled by a belief. If you believe you are limited, you will unconsciously act in limited ways. If you believe growth is possible, your behavior begins to align with that belief. This is why two people can face the same situation and produce completely different outcomes. The difference is not intelligence or luck, it is interpretation. What you tell yourself about the challenge determines whether it becomes a wall or a doorway. One of the strongest hooks in personal development is realizing that you are always acting in alignment with your self-image. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. If internally you see yourself as inconsistent, undeserving, or incapable, no external opportunity will last. You may achieve temporary success, but without internal alignment, it will feel uncomfortable and you will subconsciously sabotage it. Lasting change requires upgrading the way you see yourself before you attempt to upgrade your results. Internal change demands awareness. It requires you to observe your habitual thinking without judgment and question whether those thoughts are serving or sabotaging you. Many beliefs you carry today were formed years ago, often unconsciously, through past experiences, failures, or the opinions of others. Just because a belief feels familiar does not mean it is true. Growth begins when you challenge old narratives and replace them with intentional, empowering ones. The moment you do this, your behavior starts to shift naturally, without force. Emotio.
AL mastery is another internal foundation of external success. Life will always present pressure, uncertainty, and setbacks. Those who thrive are not those who avoid stress, but those who manage their emotional responses effectively. When you learn to pause instead of react, to respond instead of blame, you create stability in chaos.
This inner control allows you to stay focused on long-term goals instead of short-term relief. Emotional discipline is a silent advantage that compounds over time. Internal change also reshapes your standards. What you tolerate internally determines what you accept externally. When your self-respect rises, your choices improve. You begin to protect your time, energy, and attention because you recognize their value. You no longer need constant motivation because your internal standards guide your actions. Discipline becomes an expression of identity rather than an act of willpower. This is where consistency is born. Another powerful realization is that clarity precedes momentum. When your inner world is aligned, your values, intentions, and priorities are clear, decisions become easier, confusion fades, hesitation decreases, and action accelerates. Many people feel stuck not because they lack ability, but because their internal world is cluttered with doubt and contradiction. Simplifying your inner dialogue creates space for decisive action. As internal change deepens, the external world begins to respond differently. Opportunities appear because you are prepared to see them. Relationships improve because your communication improves. Results follow because your actions are now congruent with who you are becoming. What looks like sudden success from the outside is often the delayed reflection of internal work done quietly over time. Discipline is the quiet force that determines the direction of a life long after motivation fades. Motivation is
emotional, temporary, and unpredictable. It rises when conditions feel right and disappears when effort becomes uncomfortable. Discipline, on the other hand, is deliberate.
It is the decision to act according to your goals rather than your moods. The most successful people do not rely on feeling inspired. They rely on systems, routines, and commitments that keep them moving forward, regardless of how they feel on a given day. This is a critical distinction because feelings change daily, but disciplined behavior compounds consistently. One of the greatest hooks in personal achievement is understanding that discipline is a form of self-respect. Every time you follow through on a promise to yourself, you strengthen trust in your own word. Every time you quit because it feels difficult, that trust weakens. Over time, this internal trust becomes confidence. Confidence is not built through positive thinking alone, it is built through evidence, and discipline creates that evidence. You stop doubting yourself not because life becomes easier, but because you have proven to yourself that you can do what is necessary even when it is hard. Discipline removes the need for constant decision-making. When standards are clear, actions become automatic. You no longer negotiate with yourself every morning about whether to work, train, study, or improve. The decision has already been made. This eliminates mental fatigue and preserves energy for what truly matters. High performers design their lives to reduce reliance on willpower, knowing that willpower is limited. Instead, they structure habits that operate even on low-energy days. That structure becomes freedom. Another powerful realization is that discipline is not punishment, it is direction. It is the alignment between where you are and where you want to be. Many people associate discipline with restriction, but in reality, DCI. Klein expands options. The disciplined person gains more control over time, health, finances, and opportunities. The undisciplined person trades short-term comfort for long-term limitation. What feels restrictive today often becomes the very thing that creates freedom tomorrow. Discipline also reframes discomfort. Instead of seeing discomfort as a signal to stop, disciplined individuals see it as confirmation that growth is happening. Progress rarely feels pleasant in the moment. Muscles grow through resistance, skills develop through repetition, and character is built through challenge. When you expect discomfort, it loses its power to derail you. You stop asking, how do I avoid this? And start asking, how do I use this? That shift separates those who plateau from those who continue to rise. Consistency is where discipline shows its true strength. Small actions, repeated daily, produce results that dramatic bursts of motivation never can. Reading 10 pages a day, exercising 20 minutes daily, improving one skill at a time. These actions may seem insignificant in isolation, but over months and years they transform identity and outcomes. Discipline understands the math of success. Small gains compounded over time create extraordinary change. Motivation seeks intensity, discipline masters duration. Discipline also creates emotional stability. When your actions are not dependent on your emotions, your progress is no longer vulnerable to stress, fear, or self-doubt. You learn to act first and let motivation catch up later. Often, action creates motivation, not the other way around. Waiting to feel ready keeps people stuck. Acting while uncertain moves them forward. Discipline breaks the cycle of hesitation. As discipline strengthens, self-leadership emerges. You no longer need external pressure, reminders, or accountability to perform at a high level. You become internally driven, guided by standards rather than circumstances. This internal authority is rare, and it is powerful. It allows you to move steadily toward long-term success, while others fluctuate between excitement and burnout. Discipline does not shout. It works quietly, relentlessly, and over time, it changes everything. Raising your personal standards is one of the most powerful yet underestimated decisions you will ever make. Life rarely rises to the level of your hopes or intentions. It almost always falls to the level of what you are willing to tolerate. The standards you set for your behavior, your thinking, your relationships, and your performance quietly shape your future every single day. When standards are low, potential leaks away unnoticed. When standards rise, life begins to reorganize itself around that decision. This shift does not require permission, luck, or perfect timing. It begins the moment you decide that average is no longer acceptable. One of the most compelling hooks in personal growth is realizing that standards operate whether you define them consciously or not. If you do not set them intentionally, they will be set by habit, comfort, and convenience. Many people live far below their capabilities not because they lack talent, but because they have normalized behaviors that undermine excellence. Tolerating lateness, inconsistency, negative self-talk, or poor boundaries sends a message to the subconscious about what is acceptable. Over time, that message becomes identity. Raising standards interrupts this pattern and demands a higher level of self-leadership. Higher standards change behavior before they change results. When you decide that certain actions are no longer an option,
line becomes simpler.
You stop negotiating with yourself because the decision has already been made. This is why elite performers appear decisive and consistent. They do not rely on motivation, they rely on non-negotiable standards. They do not ask how they feel, they act according to who they have decided to be. That internal clarity eliminates hesitation and accelerates progress. Raising standards also reshapes your environment. As your expectations of yourself increase, your tolerance for energy-draining situations decreases. You become more selective with your time, more intentional with your commitments, and more protective of your focus. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. When your standards rise, distractions lose their appeal, and opportunities that match your values become easier to recognize. Your environment begins to support your growth instead of resisting it. Another powerful realization is that standards are deeply connected to self-worth. You treat yourself according to what you believe you deserve. When self-respect grows, so do your standards. You no longer accept relationships that diminish you, habits that weaken you, or excuses that keep you small. This internal shift often feels uncomfortable at first because it requires letting go of familiarity. But growth always requires release. You cannot elevate your future while clinging to behaviors that belong to your past. Raising standards does not mean demanding perfection, it means demanding progress. It means choosing excellence over excuses and responsibility over convenience. You begin to measure yourself not against other people but against your own potential. This creates intrinsic motivation, the most sustainable kind. You are no longer driven by approval or comparison, but by a personal commitment to becoming better than you were yesterday. As standards rise, confidence follows. Confident. CE is the natural result of living in alignment with your values. When your actions match your intentions, inner conflict disappears. You trust yourself more because your behavior is predictable and consistent. This trust fuels courage, and courage opens doors that once felt unreachable. What once seemed difficult becomes normal, and what once seemed impossible becomes achievable. Raising personal standards is not a single decision, it is a daily practice. Each choice reinforces the identity you are building. Over time, these choices compound into a future that reflects discipline, clarity, and purpose. Your results will always be the echo of your standards, and when those standards rise, your future has no choice but to rise with them.